When a grieving widow's twin daughters are cruelly set up to sing at a wedding as a joke, their melodious voices silence the room and awaken a buried past. In a town where kindness is rare and love feels forgotten, one performance unravels secrets, sparks healing, and births an unexpected second chance. If stories of unexpected kindness, love, and second chances touch your heart, please subscribe. There are more to follow. Let's start. The first snow fell like a hush over the town, soft and slow, as if winter itself had paused to breathe. Behind the cracked window of a small third-floor apartment, Maya Reynolds watched the flakes drift under the orange glow of a street lamp. Her breath fogged the glass. She didn't wipe it away. Cold settled around her shoulders like an old friend. Behind her, the radiator clicked but gave no heat. The twins were asleep. Lily curled beneath one worn quilt, Lila under another, their heads almost touching across the space between two narrow mattresses on the floor. Their little shoes, soaked from the walk home, sat by the door, turned sideways like they'd been kicked off in a hurry. A piece of cardboard had been tucked beneath the soles, the only barrier between the girls' feet and the winter pavement. Maya watched them longer than she needed to. She often did. There was something holy in their sleep, something she didn't deserve. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, though she was still wearing it from earlier. She hadn't taken it off when they came home. She rarely did anymore. Some nights, she stood like that for hours, between the cold of the window and the warmth she didn't feel anymore, and in her hand, a small, fraying envelope. He had written it 2 weeks before the accident. Her husband, Ben, still hers in memory, if not in body. The envelope had no stamp, just a note scrawled in thick pen. Don't open until you need to remember. She hadn't opened it. Not yet. Maybe because she was afraid remembering would break her in a way that surviving hadn't. Instead, she tucked it back inside the recipe box on the shelf, the one they used to fill with plans, not letters. She turned away from the window, walked quietly across the creaking floor, and pulled the second blanket up over Lila's shoulder. Her daughter murmured something, a dream perhaps, and pressed her face into the warmth. Maya kissed her forehead, then Lily's. "I'm trying," she whispered, to no one, to everything. At Willow Ridge Elementary, the rules of the playground were simple. If you looked different, if your lunch looked different, if your mother looked tired, you became a target. Lily and Lila wore their clothes with pride, even though the cuffs had been mended and the colors had faded. They didn't speak much at school, but when they did, they spoke together, in whispers and half-sentences only twins seemed to understand, and that made them strange. The other girls noticed, especially Marcy, whose father owned half the town and made sure everyone knew it. Marcy's crew found ways to chip at the twins. Not all at once, just enough to make the days feel heavier. Did your mom cut your hair with kitchen scissors again? Your shoes squeak. Like rats. You sing to each other like freaks. Lila would clench her fist sometimes, ready to say something back, but Lily would touch her elbow, just once, and the words would stay behind her teeth. Their mother had taught them that silence could be a kind of strength, but strength didn't keep you from feeling alone. Jamie had noticed them first during art class. The teacher had asked them to draw someone they missed. Lily had drawn a man's hands holding 2 small ones. Lila had drawn a guitar, cracked and leaning against a bench. Jamie, a boy with mismatched socks and a tooth missing from the side, leaned over and whispered, "You miss your dad, too?" Neither of the girls had spoken, but something shifted, a thread pulled tight between them. Quiet but felt. That afternoon, Jamie followed them out of class and said, "My dad's teaching me how to play guitar. You can come over sometime if you want. He's not scary." The girls looked at each other, and for the first time all day they smiled. Ethan Burke was a man made of silence. He moved through rooms like someone still listening for footsteps that would never come. Every morning, he made his coffee in the same chip mug his wife had bought at a roadside shop. Best day ever. It read, the print faded, She died 2 winters ago. Since then, he'd learned to raise Jamie alone, with music, warm food, and 100 small routines that made grief bearable. He hadn't expected guests that day. But when Jamie brought the girls to the front door, 2 shadows behind him, coats damp with melting snow, Ethan didn't blink. "Hi," he said gently. "Shoes by the door, please." And that was it. No questions. No awkward silences. Just kindness, steady as heartbeat. They sat on the couch, knees touching, their small hands folded in their laps. Jamie handed them sheet music, like it was candy. "My dad can play anything," he said proudly. Ethan gave a sheepish look. "That's not true. Some jazz standards still beat me." Lila tilted her head. "What's a standard?" Ethan smiled. "A song that never really gets old." There was a pause. Lily reached for the page. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Can we try one?" she asked. Ethan glanced at Maya, who had slipped in quietly behind them, hair damp from the snow, arms crossed like a shield. He nodded, then pulled the guitar from its stand by the fireplace. It was old, well-loved, though it still sang when his fingers brushed across the strings. He started slow, a lullaby almost, and when the twins sang, it was barely louder than a breath, but it filled the room like light. No vibrato, no technique, just pure, aching honesty. Like they weren't singing at all, just remembering out loud. Maya's eyes softened in the doorway. One hand clutched the hem of her sweater. She didn't speak, but her silence was the kind that meant everything. That night, as Maya tucked the girls in, Lila whispered, "He plays like Daddy." Maya didn't answer. She only brushed the hair from her daughter's forehead and lingered. When she returned to the living room, Ethan was finishing a cup of tea. "You've raised kind girls," he said simply. Maya gave a tired laugh. "I'm not sure I've raised them. Some days, I think they're raising me." Ethan looked at her. Not at her, but into her, in the kind of way someone only could when they understood what grief tastes like at breakfast. "If you ever want to bring them by again," he said, "just knock." She nodded and left without another word. The envelope found its way back into Maya's hands the next morning. The snow hadn't stopped. In fact, it had thickened, burying cars and hopes alike. She sat by the kitchen table, the girls still asleep. Her fingers traced the edges of the paper. "Don't open until you need to remember." She opened it. Inside was a single page. No date, no salutation. Just this: "You were always enough, Maya, even when I made you feel like you weren't. If something happens, don't let them carry my shadow. Let them sing. Please, let them sing." Her breath caught. A sob broke loose from somewhere ancient in her. She pressed the paper to her chest and didn't cry. Not loudly, just a sound, like a note that had nowhere else to go. By Friday, the dare had reached them like wildfire. Marcy and her friends cornered Lily and Lila near the bike racks. "There's a wedding reception at my cousin's place this weekend. Bet you wouldn't even dare to sing there." The girl said nothing. Lila, bold despite herself, narrowed her eyes. "What if we did?" Marcy smirked. "You? At a real party? Go ahead. It'll be hilarious." They walked away laughing. But that night, Lily asked, "Should we do it?" Maya looked up from folding laundry. Her fingers paused. "You don't have to prove anything," she said carefully. Lila said, "Maybe not to them." Silence followed, and then Maya did something she hadn't done in months. She opened the piano bench, took out the old lyric sheets, laid them on the table like a map. They practiced in Ethan's living room, the firelight dancing across their faces. Jamie clapped for them after every try, even when they forgot the words. Maya sat with tea she never drank. Ethan played until his fingers ached. The girls sang, again and again, their voices raw, unpolished, but growing, like something was being born, not rehearsed. Ethan watched Maya watching them, and for a moment, He reached for her hand, just brushed it. She didn't pull away, just smiled, tired and true. The night before the wedding, Maya found the twins asleep beside each other, sheet music under their pillows. She didn't move it. She only kissed their cheeks and whispered, "Your daddy would be so proud." And somewhere far above them, the snow finally stopped falling, as if even the sky had paused, waiting to hear what would come next. The day of the wedding arrived wrapped in gold. Morning broke soft and amber, sunlight slanting through half-drawn curtains like a whispered promise. Outside, snow had melted just enough to reveal patches of stubborn earth, dark and wet and hopeful. In the small apartment above the bakery, Maya sat beside the girls as she pinned their hair. Not fancy, just neat, soft braids with tiny clips that shimmered in the light. Her fingers moved carefully, reverently, like she was touching something fragile or sacred. She hadn't worn mascara in months, but this morning she did. The wand trembled in her hand. Across the room, Lily watched her mother in the mirror, eyes wide and still. "Do we look silly?" she asked. Maya paused, met her reflection's eyes. "No," she said, voice quiet but certain. "You look like music." Lila smiled sideways. "That's not a thing." "It is," Maya replied. "It is now." Ethan arrived with Jamie just before noon. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit, and boots still dusted with old salt. Jamie carried a folded garment bag like it was treasure, eyes lit up like streetlights at dusk. "We brought backup," Ethan said gently, nodding toward the bag. Inside, nestled between tissue paper, were 2 dresses, soft cream, not white, with little cap sleeves and satin ribbons at the waist. Ethan had found them the day before in the consignment shop across town. He didn't say how many stores he'd looked through. Lily touched the fabric, then looked up at him. "Are we allowed to keep them?" He knelt. "If you want them," he said, "they're yours. No take-backs." Maya watched the moment from the kitchen doorway. Her hand brushed the edge of the counter. Her eyes didn't blink. Later, as the twins twirled in their new dresses, Ethan looked over at her and said, "It's just a wedding. You know, bad music, sticky floors, too much perfume." She raised an eyebrow. "You've clearly never been to a wedding with kids who sing." He smiled, and something in both of them softened, like ice breaking on a pond. The reception hall was an old community center, dressed up with strings of fairy lights and folding chairs tied with pink tulle. There was a table of 2 sweet punch and paper plates stacked beside a single-tier cake someone's aunt had made. To a child, it looked like a palace. To Lily and Lila, it looked like a stage. Jamie led them in first, full of energy, pointing to a makeshift platform where a small speaker sat next to a microphone stand. The wedding DJ looked up, bored, chewing something. Ethan spoke to him for a moment, then turned back to the girls. "You'll go up after the bouquet toss. They only ask for 1 song, but you sing as much as you want." Maya touched her wrist lightly. "They're nervous," she said. "So am I," he replied. He said it with a smile, but not joking. Marcy stood across the room in a too bright dress and a smirk like a secret. Her group surrounded her, whispering, laughing behind cupped hands. They hadn't expected the twins to show up, much less wearing something lovely, something real. Lily saw them first, then Lila. They didn't say anything, just gripped each other's hands tighter. The lights dimmed slightly as music started, a slow waltz for the newlyweds. Maya took the girls aside, crouched to their level, and adjusted the tiny clip in Lila's braid. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she said again. Lily looked up. "But maybe we want to prove something to ourselves." That's when Maya realized this wasn't about the dare anymore. It was about the voice that had waited too long to be heard. She kissed their foreheads, one after the other. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, then." The trap had been simple. Marcy had told the DJ it was all part of a joke. "They're not really supposed to sing," she said, too sweet. "It's just for laughs. You'll get it." But when the girls took the stage, holding the mic between them like a lifeline. The room quieted, not in laughter, in curiosity. And then the first note came, tentative, barely above the hum of the crowd. Then the second, two voices, trembling but true. The song was old, a lullaby Maya used to hum when the lights went out. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't impressive. It was honest. The room stilled. People looked up from their phones, turned from their conversations. Slowly, quietly, the laughter died, because this wasn't funny. This was something else. Even Marcy froze, because what the twins gave that room wasn't perfection. It was something more painful and more beautiful. It was real. Ethan watched from the side of the room, one hand resting on Jamie's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Maya stood near the door, hands clasped in front of her. Her eyes shone but didn't spill. When the song ended, there was silence. Then applause. Not loud, but sure. The kind of applause you give something fragile, something you're afraid will vanish if you're too loud. Lila leaned into the mic, "Thank you." And the moment broke. A man in the back clapped harder. Someone let out a cheer. Jamie jumped up and down. Even the DJ looked stunned. The girl stepped down, and Maya was there, arms open, waiting. They ran into her like it was home. "I thought they'd laugh," Lily whispered. "They were supposed to," Lila added. Maya held them tighter. But they didn't. Ethan found her on the balcony 20 minutes later. The night had turned cold again. Stars flickered behind thin clouds. He brought her a plastic cup of punch and didn't say anything. She took it, smiled. "You believed in them before I did." He shrugged. "I just listened." She looked at him then. Really looked. "What do you hear now?" He waited a moment. "The sound of something starting," he said, quietly. She didn't reply, but she didn't look away. That night, back home, Lila placed a folded lyric sheet in the recipe box, the one where Maya kept Ben's letter. She didn't say anything, just slid it inside. Maya saw her. Her throat tightened. The past and the present had just shaken hands. Ethan helped carry in Maya's groceries the next morning. No big moment, just 2 bags. A smile, a simple, "You have enough milk?" Jamie played in the background, while Lily taught him harmony. They sang at the wedding. Lila played air guitar, pretending to be her dad. And for the first time in years, Maya didn't flinch when someone said his name. That night, she pulled the envelope out again, not to read it, just to hold it. Then she folded it once more and let it go. Snow fell again that week. Soft, relentless. It blanketed the rooftops and windowsills like the world was being gently erased and rewritten at once. The kind of snow that muted everything, cars, voices, the ache of old grief. It made silence feel sacred. Inside their small apartment, the girls sat at the kitchen table, heads close, whispering over scraps of paper and half-filled notebooks. Lila chewed the cap of her pen. Lily stared out the window like she was watching a melody drift by. Maya watched from the sink, drying her hands on a dish towel that had once belonged to her mother. It still smelled faintly of lavender, even after all these years. "They're writing again," she said quietly, half to herself. Ethan looked up from where he sat on the couch, his sun curled under one arm like a kitten. "That's good, right?" Maya didn't answer immediately. She turned back toward the girls, watched as Lily began to hum under her breath, soft and high like wind in tall grass. "It's more than good," she said. It was healing. It was brave. The video had been posted by someone's uncle, grainy and low-lit, the audio clipping when the girls hit the harmony. But there was something about it, something raw and true. It made people stop scrolling. Then it made them cry. Then they shared it. Within 3 days, the twins were invited to perform at the town's winter showcase. Just one song. No pressure. The invitation was typed, formal, folded into a blue envelope with embossed lettering. But Lily tucked it under her pillow like a dream. The day of performance, Maya braided their hair again. This time, she didn't rush. She let her fingers move slowly through the strands, pausing now and then to smooth a curl or tuck a ribbon. "You don't have to do it," she said gently. "You've already proved everything that matters." Lila looked up. "We're not doing it to prove anything." Lily nodded. "We're doing it because it's ours." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat and finished tying the last ribbon. The auditorium was old, with velvet seats that creaked and smelled faintly of dust and lemon oil. Lights hung like tired stars overhead, and the stage was framed by faded gold curtains. Ethan held Jamie's hand tightly as they found their seats, his heart thudding louder than the applause that greeted each act. "Are you nervous?" Maya whispered, sliding into the seat beside him. "I'm fine," he lied. She didn't believe him, but she smiled anyway. Backstage, the girls stood alone for a moment. No bullies here. No laughter behind hands. Just a quiet hallway, lined with coats and echoes. Lila reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. The lyrics. Their own. No one else had written this. No one else could have. They had written it after the wedding, on a snowy night with hot chocolate and candlelight. It was a song about the way grief makes space in your chest where something new can grow. They had called it Room for Light. When the announcer called their names, it didn't feel real, but they stepped out anyway. Lily's hand shook, but Lila held it tight. The microphone stood, waiting like a quiet witness. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room like snow on rooftops. And then they began. The song started soft, barely above a whisper. Their voices wove together like fingers interlaced. One voice, then the other, then both rising. It wasn't about the notes, or the crowd, or the cameras recording from the shadows. It was about the kitchen table. The grief that still lived in Maya's eyes. The way Jamie had clapped like he'd seen angels. The way Ethan had said, "You're safe here." It was about second chances. The kind that sneak in through cracked windows and snowflakes and whispered songs. By the time they reached the bridge, something shifted in the room. You could feel it. Like everyone had remembered something they didn't know they'd forgotten. A warmth, a hope, a softness that didn't have to explain itself. When the song ended, no one clapped right away, because they were still holding it, still inside it. And then, like dawn breaking, applause rose, swelling, real, the kind of applause that meant you're not invisible anymore. Backstage, Maya waited, her hands clasped too tightly. When the girls returned, she didn't say anything. She just held them like the silence after a storm. Ethan stood nearby, not speaking, just watching. Then one of the organizers came up, hesitant. "There's a choir," she said. "In the city? A scholarship. Weekly rehearsals. If you're interested." Maya's eyes filled again. Not because she was proud, but because they wanted. Because someone had seen her daughters and wanted. The girls looked up at her, and for the first time in years, she said yes without thinking. Later that night, after the snow had started again, Ethan stayed behind to help fold chairs and unplug cables. Maya lingered near the piano, her fingers brushing the ivory keys like petals. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then nodded again. "I never thought I'd see them like this." He stepped closer. "You mean singing?" "I mean unafraid." That night, the girls fell asleep with the stage lights still in their eyes. Jamie curled beside them on the couch like he belonged there. And maybe he did. Maya stood in the doorway for a long time. Ethan stood beside her. She didn't reach for his hand, but she didn't pull away when he reached for hers. On the table sat the folded lyrics. Beside it, an old photo of Ben, their father, with his arms around two swaddled infants. Maya didn't cry. She just smiled softly, placed a lyric sheet beside the photo, and whispered, "You'd be proud." The wind outside howled gently. The kind of wind that didn't frighten but comforted. It began with warmth. Not sudden, not fierce, but the quiet kind. The kind that comes after a long winter, when the cold has carved space for something tender to return. Maya didn't notice it at first. The way she began humming again while folding the laundry. The way her hands stopped trembling when the phone rang. The way she stopped checking the locks twice every night. Ethan didn't rush. He knew what it meant to carry grief like a second skin, so he stayed, in the quiet ways, bringing her tea without asking how her day had been, fixing the cabinet door that always stuck, telling her when the light in her eyes came back, even if she didn't believe it yet. The girls began choir that spring. Every Thursday evening, Maya would braid their hair again, now with steady hands, and walk them to the community center with Ethan and Jamie. On the way back, their arms full of giggles and song sheets, Maya would glance sideways at Ethan. Sometimes their fingers brushed. Sometimes they didn't. But neither of them pulled away anymore. One night in March, it rained. Not the cold kind. Not winter's last fight. This was soft, warm, the kind that made the windows fog and the earth smell alive again. Ethan stood on her porch, soaked through from fixing a broken pipe under her kitchen sink. Jamie was already inside, wrapped in one of Maya's old quilts, asleep on the couch beside Lily and Lila, who were whispering about harmonies and whether their next song should include a bridge or not. "I should go," Ethan said. "You should stay," Maya replied. He blinked, startled. Her voice didn't waver. She said it like she was finally answering a question she'd been afraid to ask herself. So he stepped inside. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. And for the first time in years, her heart didn't flinch. They never made a grand declaration. No breathless confession in the rain. No sweeping kiss under starlight. Instead, it was the way Ethan started bringing home 2 cartons of milk, because Lily liked it cold and Lila liked it warm. It was Maya learning how Jamie liked his sandwiches cut diagonal, always diagonal. It was a Sunday morning she reached for the coffee mugs and accidentally picked up the one that said, "World's Best Dad," and didn't cry when she held it. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because the ache had changed. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room. Spring unfolded slowly, like an apology. The frost lifted. The trees remembered themselves. And one evening, under a tree just beginning to bloom, the twins gave Maya a drawing. It was crude, in the way children's drawings always are. 5 stick figures. 2 girls. 1 little boy. A woman with long hair. And a man with a beard and a crooked smile. Above it, written in thick crayon, were the words, "Home is whoever you wait for." Maya sat down on the porch step, breath caught in her chest. Lily leaned her head on her shoulder. "We're waiting for him, too," she whispered. That night, Maya pulled out the recipe box again. Inside was the letter from Ben, folded, worn. Beside it now, the girl's lyric sheet. And next to that, a tiny paper airplane Jamie had made and tucked in without her knowing. She didn't read the letter. She didn't need to. She just added one more thing. A photo Ethan had taken last week. The 5 of them, blurred and laughing in a field, the sun set behind them like a soft curtain. She closed the box and placed it gently back in the drawer. One afternoon in May, the choir held its spring recital. The girls sang in matching dresses, their voices stronger now, brighter. Maya stood in the back, fingers laced with Ethan's. She didn't realize she was crying until he handed her a tissue, quietly, like he'd always known she would. Afterward, Jamie ran to them first, hugging their knees with a shout of, "We did it!" And Maya knelt, arms wide, and whispered, "Yes, love, you did." She looked up at Ethan. He was already looking at her. Later that night, the porch light was off. The kids were inside, curled together under a quilt with a movie humming softly in the background. Outside, the stars blinked low and gentle. Ethan stood beside her on the porch. "I know we've never said it," he began. She turned toward him, her voice low. "Then don't say it." He stilled. She stepped closer. Just stay. And he did. He stayed. It was never about fixing what had broken. It was about building something new from what still remained. The next morning, Maya opened the windows. Let the sun pour in. Let the house breathe again. The radio played softly in the kitchen. Lily was humming. Lila was dancing barefoot on the floor. Jamie was drawing another crooked family portrait. And Ethan was making pancakes. He flipped one onto Maya's plate, then kissed the top of her head, without a word, and she smiled. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, like spring rain, like music in the next room, like a second chance you never expected, but finally believed you deserved. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from. These stories matter.